If you spend enough time studying World War II from the ground level, not the maps and speeches, but the lived reality of ordinary soldiers, one truth becomes unavoidable. Most of the war was not spent fighting. It was spent enduring weather that tried relentlessly to kill morale, weaken bodies, and rot equipment. Snow that soaked wool uniforms until they froze solid. Rain that turned foxholes into open graves. Mud that swallowed boots and collapsed shelters overnight. For the men on the front lines, survival often depended less on weapons and more on knowing how to build shelter fast, quietly, and with almost nothing. These were not theories written in manuals. They were hard-earned lessons learned under artillery fire and freezing rain. Today, we're breaking down 7 World War II soldier shelter hacks that actually worked across Europe, the Eastern Front, and the Pacific, and why they still matter for anyone serious about history or survival. The first shelter hack was the disciplined use of shallow, concealed foxholes rather than deep dugouts in wet ground. Early war doctrine often pushed soldiers to dig deep, but experience taught a brutal lesson. In rain or melting snow, deep holes filled quickly and trapped men in freezing water. Veterans learned to dig shallow, angled foxholes with a slight rear slope, allowing water to drain away instead of pooling. Soil was piled on the front lip to deflect wind and shrapnel while keeping the back low. In practice, this meant a soldier could lie slightly elevated on a bed of branches or boards, staying drier and warmer. Modern application is simple. When digging in wet terrain, depth is less important than drainage and airflow. A shallow shelter that sheds water beats a deep pit that becomes a swamp. The second hack was roofing shelters with scavenged materials layered intelligently, not heavily. Soldiers learned quickly that piling on thick layers of earth caused collapses in mud or thawing snow. Instead, they built lightweight roofs using poles, doors, fence boards, or even wagon parts, then layered pine branches, grass, and only a thin skin of soil on top. The branches created air gaps that insulated against cold and slowed water penetration. In winter, snow itself became insulation once packed lightly on top. For modern use, this teaches that shelter strength comes from structure and layering, not sheer weight. A light roof with proper spacing resists collapse and insulates better than compacted mud alone. The third hack was siting shelters slightly uphill and never at the lowest point, no matter how tempting flat ground looked. Many early casualties from exposure came from poor site choice, rather than poor construction. World War II infantry learned to read terrain instinctively. A shallow rise meant water flowed past instead of through the shelter. Even a few inches of elevation could mean the difference between dry boots and trench foot. German and Soviet troops especially emphasized this after disastrous winters. Today, whether building a tarp shelter or digging in, the same rule applies. Always think like water. Where does it flow during the worst possible weather, not the best? The fourth hack was lining the shelter floor with whatever created separation from the ground. You see, bare earth steals heat faster than cold air ever could. Soldiers used pine boughs, straw, reeds, broken crates, and even empty ammo boxes flattened into platforms. In Normandy and the Ardennes, this practice dramatically reduced frostbite and exhaustion. Practical application is straightforward. Insulation under the body matters more than insulation above it. Even modern sleeping systems fail if the ground draws heat away. WWII soldiers knew this long before modern gear existed. The fifth hack was the deliberate narrowing of shelter entrances. You see, a wide opening invited wind, rain and snow straight inside. Veterans learned to build tight, low entrances, often offset from the sleeping area. Some added simple wind baffles using ponchos or sandbags. This reduced heat loss and kept precipitation out. Even today in the field, a tarp shelter benefits from a small, controlled opening. Heat retention is really about controlling airflow, not sealing yourself in completely. The sixth hack involved shared body heat without overcrowding. In cold and wet conditions, soldiers often paired up or built connected shelters that allowed warmth to accumulate while still allowing movement. Overcrowding led to condensation and dampness, but isolation led to hypothermia. Balance was key. This same principle applies today. Group shelters work best when they allow warmth to build while maintaining ventilation. WWII troops refined this balance through bitter trial and error. The seventh and final hack was constant maintenance. Shelters were never considered finished. Soldiers reshaped drainage channels, reinforced walls after rain, and replaced wet bedding daily when possible. Units that neglected this suffered higher non-combat casualties. This is perhaps the most overlooked lesson. Shelter is a living system. Weather changes, soil shifts, and materials degrade. Anyone applying these lessons today must adopt the same mindset. Build, monitor, adapt, repeat. These shelter hacks were not clever tricks. They were survival necessities forged under some of the harshest conditions humans have ever endured. They remain relevant because the environment has not changed, only our willingness to respect it. If you found this breakdown valuable and want more serious, ground-level history that actually teaches something, subscribe to Iron Age Instincts, share this with fellow historians and survivalists, and keep these lessons alive.